You've probably already pictured Thailand. The beaches, the temples glowing gold at sunset, the skyline of Bangkok lit up and never quite sleeping. But there's another version of this country, an unseen Thailand, that rarely makes it into those pictures. An authentic, off-the-beaten-path market that only exists for a few hours somewhere between one tide and the next, where the kitchen, the counter, and the road are all the same small boat. A mountain that looks like it's swimming. 3 shapes of ancient stone drifting above a sea of cloud that wasn't there an hour ago. A railway cut by hand into a cliff face left to the jungle, and the jungle has mostly forgiven it. Mostly. There's an island in the middle of a river that used to hold an entire ancient kingdom. Now it holds the kingdom's centuries-old ruins and a few hundred sacred statues with no heads. There's a train that slides past local market stalls close enough to touch every single day, and somehow it always works out. There's a valley in the north, where the fog comes in so thick by mid-morning that whole rural villages simply disappear. And at the very end of it, a sacred temple, covered in broken porcelain, waiting for the first light of day. This is the unseen Thailand most people are never shown, a hidden, untouched side of the country. And it begins fittingly on the water, where the day starts before the sun does. Most mornings here start with a traffic jam, except the road is water. Boats pull up alongside each other, 3 or 4 at a time, hulls knocking gently together until there's barely any space left to move. Some are heading toward the market, some away from it, squeezing past each other without anyone seeming to mind. This stretch of canal has been doing this for longer than anyone steering these boats has been alive. This canal didn't appear by accident. In 1866, King Rama IV ordered it dug by hand, cutting about 20 miles through the rice fields west of Bangkok. More than a century and a half later, the same water is still moving people fruit and daily life through this part of Thailand. By 6 in the morning, the canal is already crowded. Boats heavy with fruit drift past each other, while older local women steer from the stern straw hats, casting circles of shade across their faces. Some cook directly from the boat itself, balancing charcoal fires and frying noodles while the water keeps moving beneath them. Here's the part. Most photos don't tell you the canal is old, but the floating market isn't. The original heritage trading market faded once roads replaced boats, and what visitors see today was rebuilt in the 1980s. In some cases, the market is younger than the people paddling through it.
She does have a nice smile.
Behind the rows of boats, off the beaten path, and away from where the tour groups stop, the canal opens into hidden orchards, mango rambutan coconut row after row. This is closer to what the canal was actually built for, not the market. The same water that was cut through this delta more than a century ago is still doing its original job quietly, long after the reason most people come here has changed. This is the traditional Thailand that ended up on postcards. Water fruit, wide-brimmed hats, a rhythm that looks like it hasn't changed in 100 years, even where it has. Keep going away from Bangkok, away from the coast, and the land itself starts behaving differently. Somewhere in the rural northeast, there's a mountain that doesn't sit on the ground the way mountains are supposed to. That mountain is three whales. Not looks like them if you squint from one angle, actually shaped like them. Three long ridges of sandstone lie side by side on an untouched forested plateau in Thailand's far northeast, close enough to the Mekong that on clear days you can see into Laos from the highest ridge. The rock is around 75 million years old. Wind and rain spent millions of years smoothing the stone until at some point the hillside stopped looking like a hillside and started looking like three whales surfacing together. On misty mornings, especially after rain, the forest below disappears completely. The valley fills with cloud, and the stone backs seem to rise straight out of it. Not on a mountain anymore, just floating. There's almost no sound up here at that hour. No traffic, no people. Just wind moving across ancient rock that has held this shape for longer than almost anything around it. There are no railings. Visitors can walk out onto the curve of the largest whale's back, the one locals call the mother, right to where the stone ends and the drop begins. Only two of the three whales can actually be reached on foot. The smallest one, the calf, sits just out of range. There's a local story for that. Long ago, three whales, a mother, a father, and their calf, were said to swim these waters as a sacred sign of good fortune. One day, one was injured, and none of them were ever seen again. Whether anyone believes that story now doesn't really matter. The names stayed, and so did the shape of a family frozen in stone, where the calf can never quite reach the others. Here, the unseen reveals itself when the clouds rise. On the other side of the country, something else reveals itself the opposite way, only when the water falls. At low tide, a gap opens in the side of the island, that simply isn't there a few hours later. It's barely wider than a kayak. Above it, the rock face rises more than 600 feet straight out of the sea.
Diamond rock.
Paddle in, and the light disappears almost immediately. In some passages, the ceiling drops so low that you have to lie flat in the kayak, face up, close enough to the rock to feel the cold coming off it. Water drips somewhere in the dark. The sound of the paddle against stone echoes longer than it should. Then the tunnel opens, and there's a room. That's the literal translation. Hong means room. A hidden lagoon ringed by cliffs on every side, with its own small patch of sky directly overhead and nothing else.
Panak Island, boss. เกาะนี้เขาเรียกว่าเกาะพนักครับผม Panak Island.
The air smells like wet stone and old leaves. Untouched mangroves grow along the edges. Monitor lizards, some over 3 feet long, slide along the waterline. From the outside, this space doesn't exist. The island simply doesn't let on. At low tide, the mud around the edges of the lagoon starts moving. From the outside, small fish, no longer than a hand, sit completely out of the water and prop themselves up on their front fins. They skip across the surface like they've forgotten their fish. These are mud skippers. They breathe through their skin. Some climb the mangrove roots and wait there until the tide returns. Others dig burrows into the mud and trap small pockets of air inside, so even when the lagoon floods twice a day, there's still a room within the room that stays dry. The walls around all of this are limestone that began as an ancient coral reef around 250 million years ago, when this entire area sat beneath a shallow sea. From the outside, everything since then, rain, rising land, changing tides, has happened on top of something that used to be alive. Not every hidden room in this bay opens with the tide. Some don't wait for the water to fall at all. Some you simply have to swim into and trust that there's something waiting on the other side. Dig burrows into the mud, something that used to be years ago. Every hidden room in this bay open. You take a breath duck under the surface and swim toward a hole in the cliff that looks barely big enough for a person. This is the entrance to the Emerald Cave on a small off-the-beaten-path island in the Trang archipelago, and the only way in is the way you're going in right now. A few meters in the light disappears, not dims, disappears. The tunnel runs for about 260 feet, roughly the length of 3 basketball courts laid end to end. And for most of that distance, there's nothing to see at all. If you reach up, you can feel the rock close enough to touch. If you reach down, your feet won't find the bottom. The only sound is your own breathing bouncing back off rock you can't see. Then ahead, a shape. Not bright at first, just a patch of black that's slightly less black than the rest. It grows. The water shifts from darkness to gold, to a deep glowing green, and then the tunnel simply ends, and you're somewhere else entirely.
Wah, ada pantai. Oh, hidden treasure.
A beach, white sand, ringed on every side by cliffs covered in untouched jungle, with nothing but a narrow strip of sky directly overhead. No way in except the way you came. No way out either. This place shares something with the hidden rooms in Fangji Bay. A roof collapsed long ago and sealed the space off from everything except the sea. The difference is that here, once you're in the tunnel, you still have to come back through the dark. Some hidden worlds are sealed off by water and darkness, and the only way in is through both. Not every hidden world is a place, though. Some of them are people. Entire communities that ended up somewhere they never planned to be and slowly became part of the map anyway. This village is called Ban Rak Thai, and if you saw a photo of it without being told where it was, Thailand probably wouldn't be your first guess. Red lanterns, mud brick houses with curved tile roofs, tea plantations climbing the hillsides in neat rows and disappearing into mist. At nearly 6,000 feet above sea level, the air here is noticeably cooler than almost anywhere else in the country. It looks like a piece of Yunnan in southern China, placed on a mountainside near the Myanmar border. In a way, that's exactly what happened. In 1949, the Chinese Civil War ended, and some nationalist forces retreated south through the mountains and eventually reached Thailand. One of those groups settled here. For years, this village was known as Mae Ah. The name it carries now, Ban Rak Thai, means something close to the village that loves Thailand. The change wasn't accidental. The families who settled here spent decades building a life without fully belonging anywhere. Tea gradually replaced opium, and over time, the village became part of Thailand instead of simply existing inside it. Today, the lake at the center fills with mist most mornings, and people sit at small lakeside cafes drinking authentic tea grown on the surrounding slopes. Most signs are still written in Chinese. Many older residents still speak the ancestral Yunnan dialect brought here generations ago. There's also a small heritage museum, built from the same mud brick as the houses, with photographs and uniforms preserved behind glass. a reminder that some parts of modern Thailand arrived within living memory and stayed. Other parts are much older. Several hundred kilometers south, there's a city that became the first place anyone called a Thai kingdom at all, and built around an idea of what a good ruler should be, that in some ways Thailand still hasn't let go of. Walk toward this building in Sukhothai, and before you can see the whole thing, you'll see a face. A massive stone face looking back at you through a narrow gap in a high brick wall, like something watching from inside. The building is called Wat Si Chum, and inside is one of the largest sacred Buddha images in Thailand, about 50 feet tall, seated, calm, almost completely enclosed by its own walls. For centuries, people have called this statue the Speaking Buddha. Built into the thick walls is a hidden staircase, narrow enough for one person at a time, leading up behind the statue's head. According to local accounts, a king who ruled here centuries after the temple was built used that staircase before a battle against Burmese forces. A soldier climbed up unseen and spoke from behind the Buddha, so the troops below would believe the statue itself was speaking to them. According to the story, they won. This is the image most people remember here, but it's not really what makes Sukhothai matter. Before Sukhothai, Buddha images across much of the region were formal and still. This changed that. It's one of the rare moments in Buddhist art where the Buddha isn't shown arriving or leaving, just walking calmly through the world. The kings of Sukhothai described themselves differently too. Not as living gods to be feared, but as Dharmaraja, rulers whose authority came from how well they cared for the people beneath them. That idea outlived the kingdom. Centuries later, in a completely different kind of monument, built far from here in what is now one of the busiest cities in Southeast Asia, a version of that same idea would appear again. This time in the form of a wooden swing taller than most of the buildings around it. In the middle of a busy Bangkok intersection, between a row of shop houses and a temple gate, stands a wooden frame about 70 feet tall, painted bright red with nothing hanging from it. No seat, no ropes. Just two enormous teak posts and a crossbeam towering over the traffic. This is the giant swing, and the temple behind it is called Wat Suthat.
Wow, look at this.
For more than a century, this swing was the center of an annual sacred Brahmin ceremony. Young men swung high into the air and tried to grab a bag of gold coins with their teeth. Enough people fell and died doing it that the ceremony was banned in the 1930s. The swing has been rebuilt since and now stands empty. But the people who ran that ceremony never disappeared. A short walk away sits Devasathan, an ancient Hindu temple founded before Wat Suthat itself. The Brahmin priests there trace their ancestral lineage back generations, and they're still active today. Every May, some of those same priests take part in the royal ploughing ceremony. Near the Grand Palace, sacred white oxen cross freshly turned earth while priests chant, and the choices the animals make are read as signs for the coming harvest. Afterward, people rush forward to collect blessed rice and soil. Buddhist and Hindu rituals existing side by side, and nobody seems to find that unusual. Inside Wat Suthat, the main hall holds a centuries-old bronze Buddha image brought from Sukhothai when the temple was built. The style is familiar. Everything here, the swing, the priests, the Buddha image, exists because Bangkok wanted to feel connected to something older than itself. The city has only been the capital since the late 1700s. For nearly 400 years before that, the center of the country was somewhere else entirely. Today, that place doesn't really function as a city at all. At an ancient site called Wat Mahathat in the city of Ayutthaya, there's a stone head resting in the roots of a tree, not placed there, grown into. Over more than 2 centuries, the roots wrapped around the head the way fingers might hold something fragile and slowly lifted it off the ground. The head has no body. Walk through the rest of the site and you'll find dozens more like it, rows of seated Buddha statues, all missing exactly the same part. This wasn't always a ruin. For roughly 400 years, Ayutthaya was the capital of one of the most powerful kingdoms in Southeast Asia, built on an island where 3 rivers meet. By 1700, close to 1 million people lived here. Merchants came from Portugal, the Netherlands, France, China, India, and Persia. It was one of the richest and most connected cities in the world. In 1766, a Burmese army surrounded the city. The siege lasted 14 months. On the 7th of April 1767, the walls finally gave way. Temples burned. Gold was taken. Sacred Buddha statues were destroyed, and the people who built the city were marched away. The capital was never rebuilt here again. For almost 200 years, the ruins sat abandoned and slowly disappeared into the jungle before restoration began in the 20th century. Today, walking among these centuries-old headless statues is one of the most visited experiences in Thailand. This particular scar is now more than 250 years old. Time softened it. Not every scar in this country has had that long. Some are recent enough that the people who caused them and the people who survived them lived in the same lifetime as people alive today. The rock wall here is dark and scarred with vertical chisel marks every few inches. Thick ferns and green moss cover most of the limestone now, but the clean cuts underneath never disappeared. This is Hellfire Pass. In 1943, Allied prisoners of war and Asian laborers were forced to cut this gorge through solid mountain. The name came from the glow of bonfires casting moving shadows across the rock while work continued late into the night. But the real brutality of this place wasn't the darkness, it was the math of survival. Inside the Hellfire Pass Interpretive Center, there's a display that explains it better than almost anything else. A huge volume of rock showing what one prisoner was expected to move by hand in a single day sits directly beside a tiny bowl of rice, representing an entire daily ration. Driven by hunger, people searched the surrounding jungle for anything they could eat, just to keep going. Walk through the rest of the museum, and the story becomes numbers, disease, exhaustion, collapse, then step outside into the cutting itself. The silence is broken only by small wooden crosses, Australian flags, and red poppies left in the rock, a quiet reminder of what happened here. Further down the same line, the railway reaches Tam Krasai. Here, the tracks cling directly to a cliff above the Kwai River. Trains still pass through. The wooden trestle beneath them looks almost too fragile to carry the weight. When the train rolls across, the timbers groan. A moving reminder of a railway that crossed terrain that didn't want to be crossed and the cost of forcing it through. This coast through Phang Nga province is defined by what the water took and what it left behind. On December 26, 2004, the ocean didn't just rise. It pulled back first and exposed the seafloor before returning as walls of water reaching up to 15 meters high. Walk along Khao Lak today and it looks untouched. Wide grey-white sand, low buildings hidden beneath coconut trees. But resilience here never meant pretending nothing happened. The memorials stayed. People rebuilt around them and kept living. The scar stayed. The new world was built around it. A narrow cove on Koh Phi Phi Leh, ringed by limestone cliffs, rising almost 200 meters out of turquoise water, with a curve of white sand at its center. This is Maya Bay, and if you visit today, you can walk on that sand. You can take photos. What you can't do is go into the water past your knees. Not every scar on this coast came from the sea. Some came from a screen. In the year 2000, this bay appeared in a Hollywood film, and within a few years, a place almost nobody had heard of was receiving up to 5,000 visitors a day. Boats anchored directly on the reef. Feet crushed the seafloor at low tide. The blacktip reef sharks that once used this bay as a breeding ground stopped coming. In 2018, Thai authorities did something tourist destinations almost never do. They closed it. The closure was supposed to last 4 months. It lasted almost 4 years. During that time, marine biologists replanted more than 30,000 pieces of coral by hand using no artificial materials. About half survived. The sharks came back. So did baby sharks. When Maya Bay reopened, the rules changed. Boats no longer land on the beach. Visitors enter from a walkway behind the island, and numbers are limited each hour. Every August, the bay closes again on purpose, so it can recover. The cove still looks the way it did in the photos that made it famous. What's different now is everything happening outside the frame. Recovery here took 4 years, 30,000 corals, and a complete change in how people move through this place. Not every scar gets that kind of attention. Some are simply left standing exactly as they were the day everything stopped, in the middle of one of the most valuable places in the country. In March 2025, a powerful earthquake centered in Myanmar sent tremors through Bangkok more than 1,000 kilometers away. Cracks appeared across the city, and at least one building under construction collapsed completely. One structure barely seemed to notice. A 49-story concrete skeleton in the Sathorn district, windows missing, walls bare, stood through the entire quake without losing a single floor. It's been standing empty like this for nearly 3 decades. Construction began in 1990. The plan was 659 luxury apartments overlooking the Chao Phraya River and one of the most desirable addresses in Bangkok. By 1997, the building was around 80% complete. Then, the Asian financial crisis hit. Funding collapsed. Construction stopped in the middle of the project and never resumed. Locally, people call it the Ghost Tower. Bare concrete floors stretch upward with unfinished elevator shafts and vegetation growing through upper balconies. For years, photographers and urban explorers kept finding ways to reach the top even after the building was officially considered too dangerous. Today, 2 enormous advertising billboards hang from the sides. The only part of the building still making money. Most of the hundreds of unfinished buildings left behind after the 1997 crash were eventually completed. This one wasn't. It was built for a version of Bangkok that never fully arrived, and it's been waiting ever since. Not everything in this country froze when the plans didn't work out, though. Some places were designed around a problem from the beginning and simply learned how to keep going anyway. A horn sounds, then another, and then, in what looks choreographed but isn't, the market starts folding itself away. Awnings retract, baskets of chilies slide sideways, trays of fish shift just enough to clear the tracks. Nobody rushes, nobody panics. 30 seconds later, a full-size train rolls through the middle of the market, close enough to brush the overhanging produce, and almost nobody reacts. This is Miklong Railway Market, about 50 miles southwest of Bangkok, and the train passes through 8 times a day. Not around it, through it. Down the center aisle, past seafood stalls, fruit vendors, dried herbs, and buckets of live crabs, all within arm's reach of the cars. The market has been here since 1905. The railway came later. When tracks were laid directly through the existing market, the vendors chose not to move, so the railway moved through them instead. More than a century later, the awnings still fold away after every train and return a few minutes later. The produce is fresh. The prices are local. Most shoppers are Thai. The train just became famous along the way. There's a Thai name for the market, Talad Rom Hoop, the umbrella pull-down market, not because it sounded interesting, because that's exactly what it became. A market that learned a long time ago not to fight the thing running through the middle of it and simply make room. From the water, it looks like the cliff is wearing a village. A limestone wall rises almost straight out of Phang Bay and pressed against its base, built directly over the sea on wooden stilts, is a community of roughly 360 families. Homes, a school, a mosque, restaurants, narrow walkways connecting all of it. Almost none of it touches solid ground. This is Koh Phangan, and it has looked roughly like this for more than 200 years. The families who founded it came from Indonesia looking for productive fishing waters. At the time, Thai law didn't allow foreigners to own land, so they did what their maritime tradition had always done. They built over the water instead. Wooden posts went into the seabed, and a village grew on top. The mosque and small cemetery are among the few places here that actually sit on rock. For most of its history, almost nobody outside the region had heard of this place. Then, in 1986, a group of children watched the World Cup and decided they wanted to play soccer. There was one problem: no land. The children could only play briefly on a sandbar that appeared at low tide and disappeared again soon after. So they built a field. Using scrap wood, old fishing rafts, and nails, they created a floating pitch beside the docks. There were no railings. If the ball went too far, somebody had to jump into the water to get it. They called themselves Phangan FC. They entered a regional youth tournament and reached the semi-finals playing barefoot. The adults who doubted them watched from the boats. The field is still there. Children still play above the same water and beneath the same cliffs in a village that has been solving the same problem for generations. The rainforest at Khao Sok is around 160 million years old. The Amazon is roughly 55 million. What's standing here has been standing for nearly 3 times as long as the most famous jungle on the planet. In the north of the park, a lake opens up without warning. Chiaolan Lake didn't exist until a dam was built in 1982 and flooded an entire river valley, turning limestone peaks into islands. The floating bungalows here now sit above what used to be villages and farmland. Above the water rise pale limestone walls covered in jungle and reflected so perfectly that the lake can look like a second sky. At dawn, before the boats begin moving, the surface turns almost completely still. Gibbons call from somewhere in the canopy. You hear them more often than you see them. Between January and March, something else appears that most people never plan around. The rafflesia blooms. It has no stem, no leaves, and no roots of its own. Most of its life is spent hidden inside a host vine. Then a single bud the size of a cabbage appears and takes months to open. The flower can reach 80 centimeters across. It smells like rotting flesh and uses that smell to attract flies. It lasts only a few days. Then it collapses and disappears back into the forest, one of the largest flowers on Earth. Blooms once, smells like death. Gone within a week. The forest keeps it that way on purpose. Seven tiers of water drop through the jungle in Kanchanaburi province, each spilling into a pool the color of sea glass, not blue, not green. Something in between and slightly different at every level depending on depth and light through the canopy. The color comes from limestone. Minerals dissolve into the water and create something so clear you can watch fish moving along the bottom, and so unreal that photos of it often look edited. Usually they aren't. Those fish turn out to be part of the experience. In several of the lower pools, they swim straight towards you the moment you step in and begin nibbling dead skin from your feet and ankles, gently, persistently. You're standing in a waterfall and getting a pedicure at the same time, which is either relaxing or deeply uncomfortable depending on the person. The trail climbs about 1.5 kilometers through the forest to reach all 7 tiers. The lower pools are busy and loud, The higher you go, the quieter it becomes. By the 6th tier, most people turn back. By the 7th, you're often left with the sound of water and whatever is moving in the trees. The top tier is called Pufa Erawan, after the mythical three-headed white elephant. The rock formation is said to resemble its head. Once you notice it, it's difficult to stop seeing it. Three hours from Bangkok. If you time it right, you might have to pull over and wait for an elephant to finish crossing the road. Khao Yai became Thailand's first national park in 1962 and remains one of the easiest places in the country to see large wildlife behaving as if humans aren't especially important. More than 300 Asian elephants live here. They move through the forest on their own schedules and occasionally emerge into open grassland, while vehicles wait quietly at a distance. At dawn, near certain wild fig trees, something else happens. Great hornbills gather in numbers that can reach 300 birds. You hear them before you see them. Their wings make a deep rhythmic sound that feels strangely mechanical. Then the trees fill up. After dark, the park changes again. Open trucks move slowly through the forest, while rangers sweep spotlights across the undergrowth. Deer freeze, civets disappear, porcupines cross the road without hurrying. And sometimes, something much larger moves at the edge of the light, and everyone goes quiet. Near the eastern boundary every evening at dusk, millions of wrinkle-lipped bats pour out of a single cave. Not hundreds of thousands, millions. The stream continues for almost an hour and becomes dense enough to cast a moving shadow below, while hawks circle the edges, picking off stragglers. It is one of the stranger things you can watch from a folding chair in a national park only 3 hours from a city of 10 million people. The Similan Islands are 9 islands, numbered rather than named, scattered across the Andaman Sea about 70 kilometers off the coast of Phang Nga. Above water, there are granite boulders, white sand, and not much else. Below water is what brings divers from around the world. Unlike the limestone formations further up the coast, Similan's underwater landscape is granite. House-sized boulders rest across the sea floor, while soft corals and sea fans grow over every surface. Visibility regularly reaches 30 meters. You can see the shape of the rock, fish moving around it, and light filtering down in a way underwater photos rarely capture. The islands are uninhabited, and every year between May and October, they close completely. No visitors, no boats, 5 months left, entirely to the reef. That break is part of why the ecosystem still looks the way it does. The Gulf of Thailand feels completely different. Koh Tao is a small island known globally for one thing: more people receive their first open water diving certification here than anywhere else in the world. The conditions make learning unusually easy. Calm water, warm temperatures, clear visibility, reefs shallow enough to train on. You arrive not knowing how to breathe underwater. 3 days later, with some luck, you might have seen a whale shark. At 2,565 meters, Doi Inthanon is the highest point in Thailand and carries the name of King Inthawichayanon, one of the last rulers of the old Chiang Mai Kingdom. He spent much of his life trying to protect these forests, and when he died in 1897, his ashes were placed at the summit as he had requested. They are still there today in a small shrine near the sign marking the highest point in the country. Near the peak, 2 chedis rise through the mist on opposite hillsides. One honors King Bhumibol, one honors Queen Sirikit. Built in the late 1980s and early 1990s, they often appear and disappear behind low clouds as you walk between them. At this elevation, the forest changes. Tree trunks are wrapped in moss. Ferns grow from the bark. In December, temperatures sometimes drop low enough for frost. Bangkok is only a few hours away, but it feels much farther. About 200 kilometers northwest in Mae Hong Son province, a different transformation happens every November. Doi Mayu Ko looks ordinary for most of the year. Then the Bua Tong flowers bloom. 400 hectares of Mexican sunflowers cover the hillsides in yellow, so dense the mountain looks painted. The bloom lasts about 6 weeks. By mid-December, it disappears and everything turns green again. No entrance fee, no resort. Just a mountain that changes color once a year, and the people willing to drive for hours to see it before it does. The building is not large enough for what's inside it. The hall was built around the statue, not the other way around, and the result is that the moment you enter, you're standing at the feet of something that fills almost the entire space. 46 meters long, 15 meters high, gold leaf over brick and plaster, catching light from every angle. The Buddha lies on one side with eyes open and expression calm. This is not sleep. This is the moment of passing into nirvana. The soles of the feet alone are 5 meters long. Each is divided into 108 mother-of-pearl panels, showing symbols associated with a Buddha, flowers, white elephants, dancers, and tigers. Running beside the statue is a corridor lined with 108 bronze bowls. Visitors walk the length of the hall, dropping coins into them one by one, and the sound moves with them as they go. Most people come for this. Many leave without seeing the other thing Wat Pho is. Across the temple grounds are stone diagrams of the human body, 60 of them. Placed here in the 1830s by order of King Rama III, they map pressure points and energy pathways used in traditional Thai massage. Wat Pho was designed as Thailand's first public university. Medicine, astronomy, history, literature, knowledge carved into stone for ordinary people. The school that grew from those diagrams still operates today. A temple that understood long before the phrase existed that healing and learning belong in the same place. In the beginning, I mentioned a temple covered in broken porcelain, waiting for the first light of day. This is that temple. Wat Arun stands on the west bank of the Chao Phraya River, a 70-meter tower rising directly from the water. From a distance, it looks uniform. Up close, the surface breaks apart into thousands of pieces of ceramic, flowers, geometric patterns, and fragments of color pressed into plaster. The temple is named for dawn, and that is still the best time to see it. As the first light moves across the river, the tower shifts from dark to something between silver and gold. The porcelain came from Chinese trading ships. Broken plates, bowls, and ceramic fragments were carried as ballast to stabilize the crossing. Once unloaded, the pieces were no longer needed. They were gathered, sorted by color, and pressed into the surface of the temple. The exterior of Wat Arun was built from what other people threw away. The site itself is older than Bangkok. In 1768, after Ayutthaya fell, King Taksin arrived here by boat at dawn and chose this place to begin again. He named it after Aruna, the Hindu god of dawn. For 17 years, Thailand's most sacred Buddha image remained here before the capital moved across the river to what is now Bangkok. What you're looking at from the opposite bank is a tower built from discarded pieces on a site chosen at one of the country's lowest moments. For more than 2 centuries, it has stood beside the river and watched the city grow around it. Thailand began here on the water before sunrise. In some ways, it still does. Thailand will give you the version it thinks you came for. The beaches, the temples, the street food at midnight. It's very good at that version. But somewhere between the train that slides through a market and the cave you have to swim through in the dark, between the village that built a country out of nowhere and the tower built from broken dishes, there's a different country waiting. One that doesn't announce itself. One that takes a little longer to find. You found some of it today. If this opens something up for you, subscribe. There are more countries like this waiting. And if you've been to Thailand and seen something we didn't cover, leave it in the comments. Someone watching this right now will go looking for it because of what you write. In 2023, the Dominican Republic welcomed 10 million tourists. Packed beaches, record revenue, economy booming. 30 minutes away, by plane, same sea, same sun, Cuba welcomed fewer than 2.5 million. Half-empty hotels, blackouts stretching 12 hours a day. Streets going dark before 9 at night. Same ocean, 2 completely different worlds. Here is why. In 1962, the United States imposed the most comprehensive trade embargo ever placed on a country in this hemisphere. Cuba was cut off from American markets, American banks, and from any company in the world that wanted to keep doing business with America. 60 years later, that embargo is still in place. Most people hear that and think failed state, a country the world left behind. But the country that has been economically strangled for 6 decades has a lower infant mortality rate than the United States. Its doctors have worked in over 60 nations. And the travelers who go expecting ruins come back unable to explain why they cannot stop thinking about it. Cuba is not frozen. Cuba is compressed. And what that pressure built is what this video is about. If that kind of story is what you come here for, subscribe. There are more places like this waiting. Let's begin. Take the main road west out of central Havana, past the crumbling buildings, past the men sitting on doorsteps with nowhere particular to be, past the smell of diesel and salt and something frying in oil somewhere behind a wall. Keep going until the road feels like it is running out of city. You will arrive at a neighborhood called Jaimanitas. From the street, it looks like everything else. Concrete walls, flat rooftops, the kind of place a tourist would drive through without slowing down. Look up! Every wall is covered, not painted covered. Ceramic tiles pressed into cement, broken glass arranged into mosaics, mirror fragments that catch the sun and scatter it in 40 directions at once, rooftops sculpted into waves and serpents and faces with wide open eyes. A bus stop turned into a ship, a garden wall turned into an underwater kingdom. This is Fustalandia, and it has no entrance fee, no sign, no gift shop. It simply exists, growing outward year by year, swallowing everything it touches. One man built it, Jose Fuster, a Cuban artist who began with his own home in the 1970s and never stopped. He did not have a budget. He had time. He had broken things. He had a country that, in keeping everyone from leaving, had accidentally given its artists an enormous gift, nowhere else to be, and nothing to distract them from the work. Walk through it slowly. Every corner hides something new. A tile portrait of a revolutionary. A sea creature made from the base of a rum bottle. A cat with eyes made from the bottom of 2 green wine glasses, catching the afternoon light and turning it luminous. The official art world barely noticed for decades. There were no galleries here, no collectors, no international attention. Fuster simply built, because building was what he did. And that quietly is the first thing Cuba teaches you. When the external validation disappears, when the market is gone, when there is no audience and no reward, some people stop. And some people build an entire neighborhood out of broken china just because something in them needs to. But Fuster is just the beginning of the story. Cuba's most famous artwork is not on a wall. It has 4 wheels, bad brakes, and an engine that was never supposed to be there. Every Cuba documentary shows you the cars. A turquoise 1957 Chevrolet moving down a cobblestone street. A cherry red Ford Custom line with the chrome catching the morning sun. It is the most photographed image in the Caribbean. You have seen it so many times, it has almost become invisible. Now let me show you the thing nobody films. Open the hood. The original American engine is gone. Stripped sometime in the 1960s or 70s when the parts became impossible to import. What replaced it, bolted to the original chassis with brackets that exist in no engineering manual anywhere in the world, is a diesel engine from a Soviet tractor, made in a different country, designed for a different machine, speaking a completely different mechanical language. The engine does not fit the space it now occupies. The Cuban mechanic made it fit anyway. The transmission was rebuilt from components sourced across 5 different vehicles. The fuel gauge stopped working years ago. The driver knows how far he can go on a full tank because he has been doing this exact calculation for 30 years and has never once been wrong. These cars are not vintage, they are organisms. Every single one of them is a living record of every repair, every improvisation, every impossible solution their owner has invented over decades of keeping something alive that should have died in 1963. Open the hood of any one of them, and you are reading a 60-year autobiography written entirely in grease and ingenuity. The mechanics who maintain Cuba's vintage fleet are by any honest measure among the most resourceful automotive engineers alive. They have never had the right part, so they stopped needing the right part. They need whatever part is available right now, and the ability to make it do what the right part would have done. There is a word for this in Cuba: resolver. To resolve, to produce the solution from whatever is currently in your hands. You hear it everywhere here. It is not slang. It is a philosophy. Picture a garage on a back street in Centro Habana, 10 o'clock at night. A single bare bulb swings from the ceiling. A man in his 50s is lying under a 1952 Dodge, his forearms black with grease up to the elbows. On the floor beside him, a crankshaft from a Chinese motorcycle, a belt stripped from a Soviet-era refrigerator, and a handwritten diagram that only he can read. His phone rings. He ignores it. His daughter calls from the doorway. Dinner is getting cold. He says, 5 more minutes. He has been saying 5 more minutes for 2 hours. The car belongs to his neighbor. The neighbor needs it for work tomorrow morning. That is the only deadline that matters. This scene plays out in some form in every neighborhood in Havana every single night. It is not heroism. It is just what you do when the person next door needs you to show up. And when the work is done, when the tools go down, and the city finally cools by 2 degrees, an entire country takes that same instinct to the most human place imaginable. Eight kilometers of seawall, running the entire northern edge of Havana, separating the city from the sea. During the day, the Malecon is sunbaked and empty. The Atlantic sends spray over the low wall. The heat bends the air above the pavement. At night, it becomes something you will not see anywhere else on Earth. Come back at 9 o'clock on any ordinary night. The seawall is already full. Old men playing dominoes in complete concentration, as if the outcome of this game contains something important. Teenagers sharing one pair of earphones, one phone between 4 people, playing the same 30-second video over and over and laughing each time. Couples who have nowhere private to go, pressed together with their backs to the sea. Families who left their apartments because the heat becomes physical at 10 in the evening. A presence, something you push against. There is no Wi-Fi here. In Cuba, internet access is a rationed commodity. Connection cards cost money that many families cannot casually spend, which means the Malecon serves a function that is almost impossible to explain to someone who has never been without their phone. It is a place where the only thing available is other people. People look at each other here fully, without the half attention of someone whose eyes keep sliding to a screen. Then from somewhere along the wall, music starts. No announcement, no audience. 3 people had instruments, and the night was warm, and something in them needed to play. Son Cubano, the deeply rhythmic, polyrhythmic heartbeat of Cuba that eventually became what the rest of the world calls salsa, rising from the salt air, like it grew there. It is the most alive I have felt in a city in years. And then without warning, the power goes out. Not just on the Malecon, everywhere. The city disappears. It happens so regularly in Cuba now that people barely react. A shift in body language. Someone lights a candle on the seawall. The dominoes game continues by the glow of a phone screen held low over the tiles. In October 2024, Cuba's entire national power grid collapsed at once. The country's largest generating plant failed. For several days across every city, every neighborhood, every hospital and farm and kitchen, there was no electricity at all. It was the most severe blackout in Cuba's history. Since then, daily outages of 10 to 12 hours have become ordinary in many parts of the island. Think about what that actually means. Not in the abstract, in the physical. No refrigeration. In a tropical climate where the temperature stays above 30 degrees Celsius at night, food spoils in hours. No fans. No lights after dark. No water when the electric pumps stop. For hospitals, cancelled surgeries. For diabetics, insulin that requires cold storage and has nowhere cold to go. The crisis is not a mystery. The national grid was built almost entirely on Soviet-era infrastructure equipment designed in the 1970s that has been running without adequate maintenance or replacement for 50 years. Cuba's main fuel supplier, Venezuela, has been reducing oil shipments for years as its own economy deteriorated, and the country's ability to purchase replacement equipment from international markets is constrained by the US economic embargo in ways that are technical, legal, and deeply tangled. One cause did not create this. 5 causes did, and they all arrived at the same time. What stays with you, though, is not the policy or the infrastructure. It is the face of a woman in a Havana doorway who hears the power go out, looks up at the dark ceiling for 1 second, and then turns back to her conversation without missing a beat. That resilience is real. It is earned and remarkable and worth witnessing. But the thing it is protecting against is also real. The next morning, the line starts forming before sunrise. Not for something rare, just bread. By 6, there are already 30 people outside a small neighborhood bodega, plastic bags in hand, quiet, patient. An old man leans against the wall, not asleep, just waiting. A woman bounces a toddler on her hip. 2 teenagers sit on the curb, not talking. Nobody knows exactly what will arrive or when. If the truck is late, breakfast changes. If the truck does not come, the day changes. Not dramatically, Cubans have stopped being dramatic about this. Just quietly, the plan adjusts. Because adjusting is what you do here every single morning before the rest of the world has opened its eyes. That is the thing the statistics cannot convey. The blackout is the headline. The line before sunrise is the daily reality. And it is the daily reality, not the crisis moment, that tells you who a people actually are. It fits in the palm of your hand. A small worn booklet, often held together with tape across the spine. La libreta, the ration book. Every Cuban household has one. It entitles the holder to a monthly allocation, a few pounds of rice, a small ration of cooking oil, some sugar, a handful of eggs. On paper, it is a welfare mechanism. In practice, it is something more than that. For the roughly 60% of Cubans who depend primarily on state salaries, a minimum wage of around $17 per month, the libreta is not a supplement. It is the floor between eating and not eating. The system was created in 1963, 2 years after the US imposed its economic embargo. It was originally designed as a short-term measure, a way to distribute scarcity fairly while the country adjusted. 60 years later, it is still here. The reasons it persisted are layered and do not reduce to a single cause. In 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, and Cuba lost 80% of its international trade almost overnight. The country's agricultural system, collectivized and centralized since the early years of the revolution, was never efficient enough to fill the gap. Cuban economists have argued for decades that the structure of state farming suppressed productivity and kept the country dependent on imports it could no longer afford. And after 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic eliminated half of Cuba's foreign exchange income in a single year, cutting off the remittances and tourism dollars that millions of families had been using to supplement the ration. The result, by 2024, inflation that had burned through 77% in a single year just 3 years prior. A peso worth a fraction of what it was, a food production sector at historically low levels. The bodega line at 4 in the morning is not a symbol of ideology. It is just people trying to secure what the booklet says they are entitled to before it runs out. And this is where Cuba becomes hardest to explain. Because the same country that struggles to keep milk on the shelves has sent doctors into disasters around the world. More than 60 nations in crisis. Haiti after the earthquake. West Africa during the Ebola outbreak. Yemen, Venezuela, Bolivia. Cuban medical missions are among the most widely deployed in the developing world. How is that possible? The answer lives in a small consultation room in a residential neighborhood, and it is one of the strangest, most quietly impressive things Cuba ever built. Somewhere in every Cuban neighborhood, there is a door with a small sign. Behind it, a consultation room, a waiting area with 4 chairs, and a doctor not assigned to a hospital across the city, but assigned to this specific block of this specific street, living in the apartment directly above. This is the Médico de la Familia, the family doctor program. The doctor does not wait for patients to get sick enough to come in. The doctor walks the street, visits the grandmother who has not been seen in a few days, knows that the child in the 3rd house has asthma and that dust levels go up in dry season, knows which family is under strain, which elderly man has started skipping his blood pressure medication, which new mother is struggling. The medicine is often short, the equipment is old, the supply chains are broken in ways that are now familiar. And yet Cuba's health outcomes at the community level are anomalously good for a country at its income level. Infant mortality rates that are comparable to wealthy developed nations. Life expectancy figures that hold up against countries spending 50 times more per capita on healthcare. How do you explain that? You cannot explain it with equipment or money because Cuba does not have enough of either. You can only explain it with presence, with a doctor who knows your name and will knock on your door before you know you need them.
Blood pressure cuff. A future doctor?
The limitation created the methodology. The absence of resources forced an intimacy that money usually replaces, and that intimacy turned out to matter more than anyone expected. That same principle, knowing your neighbors being present, showing up before you are asked, is not a healthcare policy in Cuba. It is just how communities work here, because there has never been an alternative. To see where that same principle gets written into stone, literally, you have to leave the city, drive south, and let Cuba's oldest landscapes do the talking. There is a city in southern Cuba called Trinidad. UNESCO declared it a World Heritage Site. Walk the streets and you understand immediately why, though the reason is not the one you might expect. The cobblestones are original. From the colonial period, they have not been replaced. The buildings are largely the same pastel-wash structures that housed Spanish merchant families in the 18th century. The wrought iron window grills, the wide wooden doors built for heat, for horses, for a scale of life that no longer exists anywhere else. The reason Trinidad still looks like this is almost embarrassingly simple. There was never enough money to change it. Cities across Latin America spent billions in the 1980s and 90s tearing down colonial quarters and replacing them with concrete and asphalt. Trinidad never had the budget for that kind of progress, and so the cobblestones stayed, the facades stayed. The city became by accident one of the best preserved examples of Spanish colonial urbanism in the Americas. Walk it at dusk. The light goes amber. The shadows stretch long between buildings that predate the United States. The plazas were sized for people, not for parking. The alleys are narrow enough that you cannot ignore the person walking toward you. It is a city that was built to force connection, and because it was never modernized, it still does. From Trinidad, drive west along the coast to the Vinales Valley, because what you find there is the version of this same story told in tobacco and oxen and red volcanic earth. The valley floor is impossible green, bordered by limestone mogotes, enormous rounded hills that rise hundreds of meters straight out of the farmland, their vertical faces sudden and clean, as if cut by something vast. Geologists estimate that some of these formations are over 150 million years old. They were old before the dinosaurs disappeared. In the fields between them, the tobacco grows, and in the early morning, when the mist is still sitting low over the red soil, you will see a farmer plowing with oxen. Not a tractor, oxen. This is not poverty on display. This is a specific choice. The highest grade Cuban tobacco requires soil that heavy machinery destroys. Tractor wheels compact the earth. Chemical runoff contaminates the delicate topsoil. The oxen plow aerates without pressing. It turns without poisoning. And the farmer who follows behind it, inspecting every leaf by hand, pulling individual insects off individual plants, reading color and texture and moisture with decades of accumulated instinct, that farmer is doing something no algorithm can replicate and no app can replace. When the leaves are harvested, they hang in long wooden curing barns called galeras for 60 days. Then the master rollers torcedores shape each cigar entirely by hand, using a technique that takes years to learn and decades to master, producing a product so consistent that the same blend tastes identical in Havana and in Tokyo and in every city in between. Cuba was never able to industrialize this process. And that inability that forced fidelity to the old way produced something the rest of the world has spent decades trying to imitate and cannot quite reach. The knowledge survived because the people stayed with it, because they had no other choice, and because this is the part worth sitting with, staying with something for long enough eventually transforms obligation into mastery. But the valley is not the last thing Cuba wants to show you. Because in 2024, something happened on this island that almost nobody in the outside world fully understood. And to understand it, you need to know one number. Between 2020 and 2024, more than 1.4 million Cubans left the island permanently. Not to visit, not temporarily, left. In 2024, alone, official figures recorded over 250,000 emigrants. And in that same year, Cuba registered only 71,000 births, the lowest number in 65 years. For every Cuban born in 2024, more than 3 left the country. The people leaving are not predominantly elderly. They are young, working age. The doctors, the engineers, the torcedores, the mechanics, who know how to make a Soviet tractor engine run in a 1957 Chevrolet chassis. But it is not just labor that is leaving. It is memory. When a young Cuban leaves the island, does not only lose a worker, it loses a knowledge system. Someone who knows which mechanic can rebuild a water pump from scrap metal. Someone who knows which doctor still has antibiotics and which street to find them on. Someone who knows how to cure tobacco, leaves by smell alone, how to fix a Lada transmission without the manual, how to keep an elderly neighbor alive through a 3-day blackout without making it feel like charity. That knowledge does not live in textbooks. It lives in people, and right now those people are boarding planes. On the 4th floor of an apartment building in Vedado, there is a door with a padlock on it. The neighbor across the hall knows what the padlock means. The family left 8 months ago. 3 of them, mother, father, a teenage son on a flight to Havana, then Nicaragua, then a bus north. The kind of journey that takes weeks and costs everything they had saved. Inside the apartment, the furniture is still there. A bicycle leaned against the wall. A calendar from 2023 still hanging in the kitchen. They could not take much. They took themselves. The neighbor checks the door sometimes out of habit, just to see if the padlock has changed. It never has. In 2022, U.S. border enforcement recorded more irregular crossings from Cuban nationals than from Venezuelans, a country with 3 times Cuba's population and its own severe displacement crisis. Cuban families in Miami, in Madrid, in Mexico City, in Sao Paulo. A diaspora scattered across 4 continents built almost entirely within the last 5 years. The island is becoming quieter, not peacefully quiet, emptier quiet. And the people who remain, the woman on the Malecon, the mechanic in his garage, the torcedor in the galera, they are aware of it. They feel it in the neighborhood, in the missing faces, in the apartments that used to have lights in the windows and now stay dark. A 2025 survey found that 78% of Cubans either want to leave the country or know someone close to them who does. Read that again. Not 78% are unhappy with the government. Not 78% oppose one policy or another. 78% either want to leave or are already watching someone they love disappear across a border. That number is not the story of a failed revolution or a successful revolution. It is the story of a country that has been under compounding pressure for so long that even the people who built their lives into its foundations are beginning to ask how much longer they can hold. And yet, this is where the documentary has to resist the easy ending, the one where Cuba either breaks our hearts or inspires us with its resilience, and we close the laptop and move on. Because the truth is more complicated than either version, and it lives in the space between what Cuba is losing and what it has quietly, stubbornly, impossibly built. Sit in any Cuban neighborhood long enough, and you will notice something that is nearly impossible to describe to someone who has not experienced it. The density of people knowing each other, not casually, not the way you know your neighbor's name because you have seen them in the hallway, the way you know who has the contacts to find the thing you need, who will take your children when the school closes unexpectedly, whose mother is sick and needs someone to sit with her, whose husband has been out of work for 3 months, and whose kitchen you can quietly stock without making it a formal act of charity. This is not a cultural tradition that was preserved. It is a survival mechanism that was constructed under pressure over 60 years because the state infrastructure that might have replaced it never arrived. In most of the developed world, when something breaks in your life, you call a service. You pay someone. You outsource the problem. The community bond that used to perform those functions has been quietly dissolving for decades, replaced by transactions, and most of us did not notice until we found ourselves in a crisis and realized we did not actually know our neighbors. In Cuba, the transaction was never available, so the bond never broke. The Médico de la Familia doctor who knocks on doors before patients get sick, the malecón that fills every night with people who have nowhere else to be, the mechanic who has been keeping the same engine running for 30 years, not because he was paid well, but because that engine belongs to someone he knows, and that person needs it tomorrow morning. None of this is sustainable at the scale the crisis has now reached. The exodus is real. The blackouts are real. The ration book lines at 4 in the morning are real. Cuba needs things to change, and the people who live here are not asking us to romanticize their hardship. But here is the question that Cuba asks every visitor who pays close enough attention. What did you lose without noticing in all the years you were busy making your life more comfortable and more efficient and more connected to everything except the person next door? I want to leave you with one moment. It is a night like any other night on this island. The power has been out for 4 hours. The street is dark. The fans are off. The heat is the kind you can feel on your skin, even when you are sitting still. On the doorstep of a narrow house in central Havana, 2 women are talking. Not about the blackout, not about politics, about something that happened a long time ago, something funny, something one of them just remembered. And they are laughing, fully, the kind of laugh that takes over your whole body and makes the person beside you laugh harder just from the sound of it. Not despite the dark. Just laughing. That moment does not explain Cuba. Nothing explains Cuba in a way that fits cleanly into a sentence or a headline or even a 40-minute documentary. But that moment is true, and it is the truest thing I saw on this island. Cuba is not a cautionary tale. It is not an inspiration poster. It is a place, a real, complicated, struggling, alive, magnificent place where the full range of what human beings are capable of is on display all at once. The worst of what pressure does to people, and the best. The reef off the southern coast is still there, still growing, still untouched. A 60-year-old accident of history that turned out to be one of the most biologically rich places in the Caribbean. Maybe some things can only grow in the places the rest of the world forgot to develop. I do not know if that makes the isolation worth it. The people who lived inside it would have the right to answer that question, not me. But I know what the reef looks like, and I know what it took to preserve it. And I know that when you look at Cuba the same way, with the patience to let the full picture come into focus, you see something that the postcard never shows you. You see a country that is still after everything very much alive. If this video reached you, share it with someone who is ready to think about Cuba differently. It does not take much, just someone who is curious enough to stay until the end. I will see you in the next one. You've seen Rome. You've walked the ruins of Athens. Maybe you've even touched the stones of the Colosseum and thought you understood what it means to stand where history happened. But what if I told you there's an island in the Mediterranean that makes those places look like footnotes? An island conquered by 10 different civilizations, where Greek temples hide inside Catholic cathedrals, where the ground beneath your feet has been shaken, burned, buried, and rebuilt so many times that every layer of soil tells a different story. Here's the question nobody asks. Who actually owns a land that has been claimed by Phoenicians, Greeks, Romans, Vandals, Byzantines, Arabs, Normans, Spanish, French, and Italians, all within the span of 3,000 years? The answer is simple and terrifying. No one. Because the real ruler of Sicily has never been human. It has always been the volcano. And today, we're going inside. Not just to see Sicily, but to understand why civilizations keep returning to this island even though it has destroyed them over and over again. Some places on Earth are beautiful, some are dangerous. But Sicily is something else entirely. It's a place where beauty and destruction have become the same thing. Are you ready to discover an island that shouldn't exist? Let's begin with fire. (3,300 meters above sea level. That's where Mount Etna ends. But that number is a lie, because Etna's summit changes every few years. Sometimes it grows taller. Sometimes entire craters collapse into themselves. The mountain is alive, not metaphorically, actually alive. Etna is one of the most active volcanoes on the planet, with recorded eruptions going back to 1500 BCE. That's 35 centuries of documented destruction. And here's the twist. The people who live in its shadow don't fear it. They worship it. Look at the slopes of Etna, and you'll see something impossible. Vineyards. Row after row of grapevines climbing terraces carved directly into volcanic rock. The soil here is so rich in minerals, iron, potassium, magnesium, that the grapes produce wines unlike anything else on Earth. Dark, complex, almost metallic in their intensity. Winemakers call this soil Nerello, after the black volcanic sand. It's the same substance that buried entire cities, and now it grows some of the most expensive grapes in Italy. But wait, here's what nobody tells you about Etna. The ancient Greeks didn't just see a mountain when they looked at this volcano, they saw a forge. According to mythology, the god Hephaestus, blacksmith of the Olympians, built his workshop directly beneath Etna's summit. Every eruption was the sound of his hammer striking divine metal. Every plume of smoke was the exhale of his furnace. When the mountain rumbled, the Greeks believed weapons were being crafted for gods. And the one-eyed Cyclopes, the monstrous giants from Homer's Odyssey, they weren't random creatures. They were Hephaestus's assistants, trapped inside the volcano for eternity. Some historians believe the single eye of the Cyclops wasn't mythological at all. It was the glowing red crater, watching from the peak like a burning pupil against the night sky. Imagine standing on this slope 25 centuries ago. No science, no geology, just a mountain that breathes fire, and a culture trying to make sense of it. This is where Sicily begins, not with humans, with the earth itself refusing to stay still. And what happens when humans try to build a city at the foot of a volcano that never sleeps? That brings us to Catania, the Black City. If you've never heard of Catania, there's a reason. It's not the kind of place that ends up on tourist postcards. There are no white marble columns here, no gleaming Renaissance facades. Instead, every building, every church, every street is made from the same material: basalt, black volcanic rock, cut directly from cooled lava flows. Walking through Catania feels like entering a photographic negative of a European city. Where you expect lightstone, there's darkness. Where you expect warmth, the buildings absorb the Mediterranean sun and radiate heat back at you like standing too close to a furnace. The city looks like it was carved from obsidian. And here's the thing, it was. In 1669, Etna erupted with such force that a river of molten rock flowed directly through Catania's western districts. Entire neighborhoods vanished beneath a tide of lava that took weeks to cool. Then, just 24 years later, in 1693, an earthquake measuring approximately 7.4 on the Richter scale leveled whatever the volcano had spared. 60% of the city collapsed. Tens of thousands died. Most civilizations would have abandoned this place, called it cursed, moved somewhere, anywhere, safer. Catania did the opposite. They took the cooled lava that had destroyed them, cut it into blocks, and used it to rebuild. Every destruction became construction material. The Baroque palaces that line Via Etnea today, built from basalt. The massive Benedictine monastery of San Niccolò Larina, one of the largest in Europe. Volcanic stone. Even the city's symbol, a peculiar elephant statue called Liotru, stands on a pedestal of black rock, carved from the flows that once threatened to erase Catania from the map. There's a psychological term for this, post-traumatic growth. The idea that surviving catastrophe can lead to strength beyond what existed before. Catania isn't just a city, it's a monument to the human refusal to stay destroyed. But if you think that's the most dramatic use of a volcano in architecture, wait until you see what the Romans built above the coastline. Taormina. You've probably seen photographs. The ancient Greek theatre perched on a cliff, with terrace seating carved into the mountainside and a view that stretches across the Ionian Sea. It looks like something from a dream, perfectly preserved, impossibly beautiful. But here's what the photographs don't show you. Stand at the center of the theater's orchestra pit, the circular performance space where actors once moved, and look directly through the gap where the stage building used to stand. That opening isn't random. It isn't damage from age. It was designed deliberately to frame a single view. Mount Etna. The architects who built this theater in the 3rd century BCE calculated the exact angle needed to make the volcano visible from every seat. Not partially visible, perfectly centered. The most active volcano in Europe, positioned like a painting behind the performers. When eruptions occurred, and they occurred often, audiences watching a tragedy about doomed heroes would see actual fire lighting up the sky behind the actors. Think about that for a second. 2,300 years ago, engineers understood geometry, sight lines, and theatrical impact so well that they built a permanent special effect into their architecture. No electricity, no projectors, just precise mathematics and a volcano that cooperated for millennia. The Teatro Antico still hosts performances today, and Etna still appears in the background, smoking faintly, reminding everyone in the audience that this island has never been tamed. This is what separates Sicily from every other destination. The land itself is a character, and it has been performing its role longer than any human civilization. But volcanoes are only the beginning of Sicily's story, because long before the Romans built theaters, another civilization arrived here with a completely different vision. If you want to understand how Greeks saw the world, don't go to Athens. Go to Agrigento. On the southern coast of Sicily, overlooking the Mediterranean, lies the Valley of the Temples, and calling it a valley is almost misleading. It's actually a ridge, a limestone plateau, where the ancient Greeks constructed what might be the most spectacular collection of Doric temples outside of Greece itself. And here's the crucial detail. Many of these temples are better preserved than anything in Athens. The Temple of Concordia, built around 440 BCE, still stands almost complete. 34 columns remain upright, supporting an architrave that has survived earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, Arab invasions, and Norman conquests. When you see it at sunset, the limestone transforms from pale cream to honey gold to deep amber, as if the stone itself is catching fire. But Concordia survived for a peculiar reason. In the 6th century CE, a bishop named Gregorius converted it into a Christian church. He filled the spaces between the columns with walls, cut arched doorways into the ancient stone, and rededicated the building to St. Peter and St. Paul. The Greek temple didn't die. It changed religion. When archaeologists restored the site in the 18th century, they removed the Christian additions. But the structure remained intact precisely because those additions had protected it. Pagan architecture saved by Christian faith. It's the kind of irony Sicily seems to specialize in. Now walk east along the ridge to the Temple of Juno, perched at the edge of a cliff, with views down to the sea. Half its columns have fallen, creating a scene of deliberate ruin that looks almost staged for photographs. But those fallen columns tell a story too. This temple burned in 406 BCE when Carthaginian armies attacked the city of Akragas, destroying what had been one of the wealthiest Greek colonies in the world. The Greeks never rebuilt it. They left the scars. And that brings us to a place that takes this concept of historical scarring to an extreme level that borders on disturbing. Selinunte, the largest archaeological site in Europe. About 90 kilometers west of Agrigento, on Sicily's southwestern coast, sprawl the ruins of Selinunte, and sprawl is the operative word. This isn't a single temple. It's an entire city, frozen mid-collapse, with construction debris still scattered exactly where it fell in 409 BCE. Here's what happened. Selinunte was a Greek colony locked in territorial warfare with Carthage, the North African Empire based in modern-day Tunisia. In 409 BCE, a Carthaginian army arrived with siege engines, soldiers, and a mission to erase the city from existence. They succeeded. In 9 days, Selinunte fell. The population, estimated at 30,000, was either killed, enslaved, or scattered. But here's the detail that transforms this site from ruins into something genuinely haunting. When the attack began, the Greeks were still building Temple G. At the time, it was meant to become the largest Doric temple ever constructed, larger than the Parthenon, larger than any religious structure in the Greek world. Massive column drums, each weighing several tons, lay in the quarry a kilometer away, carved and ready for transport. Other blocks sat in the construction zone, positioned for lifting. They're still there. When you visit Selinunte today, you can walk through a quarry where half-carved column sections remain attached to the bedrock. You can see ramps built for dragging stone that were never used. You can stand among fallen drums that were abandoned mid-project because the workers had to run for their lives. Temple G was never finished. The Carthaginians made sure of that. And Sicily, as always, simply absorbed the trauma and kept going. But ancient Greeks weren't the only ones who left their mark here, because when the Romans took control, they brought something entirely different: luxury, excess, and a willingness to spend unimaginable wealth on private pleasure. That brings us to the most surprising flaw you'll ever see. Piazza Armerina, a small town in the interior of Sicily, surrounded by agricultural hills and forests. There's nothing remarkable about the landscape, nothing that suggests what lies beneath. But dig down 4 meters, and you find the Villa Romana del Casale, a 4th century CE Roman villa so extravagant, so absurdly decorated, that scholars still argue about who could have afforded it. Emperor, provincial governor, fantastically wealthy merchant. No one knows. What we do know is the floor. The villa contains approximately 3,500 square meters of Roman mosaics, the largest collection of its kind ever discovered. Not fragments, not faded patches, complete narrative scenes, still vivid in red, gold, blue, and green, covering almost every room. There are hunting scenes where Roman aristocrats pursue wild boar and deer across African savannas. There are mythological scenes where gods and heroes enact famous legends. There's a corridor depicting exotic animals, elephants, rhinoceroses, ostriches, being captured for transport to Roman arenas. And then there's the most famous image of all. In one of the private chambers, a mosaic shows 10 young women exercising. They're engaged in athletic activities, throwing discus, lifting weights, running races. But what makes the scene extraordinary, and what has made it a minor sensation in modern times, is their clothing. Or rather, their lack of it. The women wear what can only be described as ancient bikinis, 2-piece outfits consisting of a band across the chest and short, underwear-like bottoms. It's nearly identical to swimwear that wouldn't become fashionable again until the 1940s. In the 4th century CE, on a floor in Sicily, hidden under meters of soil for 1,600 years. When archaeologists uncovered this mosaic in the early 20th century, they didn't know whether to be shocked, amused, or simply confused. Here was proof that fashion, like history, is circular. What feels modern turns out to be ancient. What feels ancient turns out to be startlingly relevant. But Sicily's layers go deeper than Romans and Greeks, because after the classical world collapsed, this island became the prize in a centuries-long struggle between faiths, empires, and ambitions that would leave marks you can still trace today. And nowhere is that collision more visible than in the capital. Palermo is not a city that makes sense. Walk through its historic center, and you'll pass buildings that seem to belong to completely different civilizations, because they do. Arab domes rise next to Norman towers. Gothic arches frame Baroque interiors. Byzantine mosaics glitter inside structures redesigned by Spanish architects. It's as if someone shuffled a deck of historical cards and dealt them randomly across the urban landscape. But here's the revelation. This chaos is intentional. The Palermo Cathedral is the perfect case study. Construction began in 1185 during the Norman period. The original design was Romanesque, heavy, solid, fortress-like. But then Spanish rule brought Gothic modifications, pointed arches, taller windows, flying buttresses. Later still, Baroque renovations added theatrical facades, sculptures, and gilt decorations. And throughout all these changes, the foundations remained. A structure built on the site of an earlier Byzantine church, which itself was built on the site of an earlier Arab mosque. 5 civilizations, 1 building, each layer preserved, not erased. This isn't architectural confusion, it's architectural negotiation. Every ruler who conquered Sicily faced a choice: destroy what came before or incorporate it. Most chose incorporation. Why waste perfectly good stone? Why offend subjects who still remembered the old structures? Better to add your own layer and move on. The result is a city that reads like a vertical timeline. You can date buildings by looking at which styles appear at which heights. Ground floors tend to be older, Arab or Byzantine foundations. Upper stories show Norman or Gothic influences. Roof lines and decorative elements often date from the Baroque period or later. And if you think that's impressive, wait until you see what the Normans did with gold. "12 kilometers south of Palermo, on a hilltop overlooking the Conca d'Oro Valley, stands the Cathedral of Monreale. From the outside, it looks almost modest. Plain stone walls, a fortress-like appearance, nothing to suggest what waits inside. Step through the bronze doors, and your eyes will need a moment to adjust. Not to darkness, to light. The entire interior of Monreale Cathedral is covered in Byzantine-style mosaics. Walls, ceilings, arches, apses, every surface glitters with images made from thousands of tiny glass and gold tesserae. Scholars estimate that the mosaics contain approximately 2,200 kilograms of gold. That's nearly 2.5 tons of precious metal, beaten into thin sheets and embedded into the artwork. The effect is overwhelming. In morning light, when the sun enters through the eastern windows, the gold seems to pulse. The figures, Christ, the Virgin Mary, saints, angels, prophets, appear to hover against backgrounds that shimmer like liquid metal. This isn't decoration. This is psychological engineering. Medieval viewers, most of whom couldn't read, would have understood instantly. They were standing inside a visualization of divine power. And here's the power move behind the artwork. The Norman king, William II, commissioned Montreal, not primarily for religious reasons, but for political ones. The Archbishop of Palermo had become too influential, too independent. William needed to counterbalance that power with a new religious center, one that he controlled. So he built Montreal, elevated its bishop to archbishop status, and funded the most spectacular interior money could buy. 2,200 kilograms of gold, not for God, for politics. Sicily, as always, understands that power wears many masks. But the most mind-bending architectural fusion isn't in Palermo or Montreal. It's on a small island at the southeastern tip of Sicily, in a cathedral that hides a secret in plain sight. Ortigia, the historic heart of Syracuse, connected to the mainland by two narrow bridges. This tiny island, less than 1 square kilometer, has been continuously inhabited for nearly 3,000 years, making it one of the oldest urban settlements in Europe, still functioning as a living city. And at the center of Ortigia stands a building that will rewire how you think about religious architecture. The Syracuse Cathedral looks from the outside like a typical Baroque church. Curved facades, decorative sculptures, an impressive but familiar design. Now walk inside, look at the walls, and try to process what you're seeing. Embedded directly into the structure of the cathedral are 12 massive Doric columns, original, Greek, cut from limestone in the 5th century BCE. They're not displayed behind glass or set apart as artifacts. They're load-bearing elements of a Catholic church built 1,500 years after they were quarried. Here's the story. Around 480 BCE, the Greeks built a temple on this spot dedicated to Athena. It was one of the grandest religious structures in the Western Greek world. The columns, each about 9 meters tall and 2 meters in diameter at the base, supported a roof decorated with gold and ivory. When Christianity became the dominant religion, the temple wasn't destroyed. It was converted. Byzantine architects filled the spaces between the columns with walls, punched arched windows through the old structure, and rededicated the building to the Virgin Mary. Later renovations added the Baroque facade, but nobody removed the columns. They couldn't. The Greek temple had become the skeleton of the church. Stand inside Syracuse Cathedral today, and you're simultaneously standing inside a Greek temple. The same stone that worshippers touched while praying to Athena is touched by tourists and pilgrims taking photographs. The same shadows that fell across ancient rituals still darken the same floor every afternoon. Religions change, empires rise and fall, the columns remain. But Syracuse holds one more secret, and this one involves myth, water, and a plant that shouldn't exist. At the edge of Ortygia, facing the harbor, you'll find a small freshwater spring emerging directly next to the sea. This is the Fountain of Arethusa, one of the strangest natural phenomena in Sicily and the inspiration for one of the most famous Greek myths. According to legend, Arethusa was a nymph who attracted the attention of the river god Alpheus. When she rejected him, he pursued her relentlessly. Artemis, goddess of the hunt, took pity on Arethusa and transformed her into a freshwater spring. But Alpheus refused to give up. He transformed himself into an underground river that flowed beneath the Mediterranean Sea, emerging in Sicily to mingle his waters with hers for eternity. It's a beautiful story. It also explains a genuine geological oddity. How can fresh water bubble up right next to salt water without mixing? The answer involves pressure, rock permeability, and aquifer dynamics. But even knowing the science doesn't diminish the strangeness of standing there and watching clear, cold fresh water rise from the ground while the Mediterranean laps at the stones a few meters away. And here's the botanical twist. Growing in the Fountain of Arethusa are papyrus plants, the same species that grows along the Nile, one of the only places in Europe where papyrus exists naturally outside of controlled botanical gardens. How did it get there? Nobody knows for certain. Trade connections with Egypt, seeds carried by birds, ancient introduction that somehow survived. The papyrus isn't supposed to be there, but it is. Another impossibility that Sicily simply absorbs into its endless collection of anomalies. By now, you might be thinking that Sicily's most dramatic stories are behind it, that the ancient and medieval periods contained all the drama. You would be wrong. Because in 1693, something happened that would reshape eastern Sicily more completely than any conquest, any empire, any ideology. The earth opened. January 11th, 1693. At approximately 9 p.m., an earthquake estimated at magnitude 7.4 struck southeastern Sicily. It was among the most powerful seismic events in European history. Within minutes, cities that had stood for centuries collapsed into rubble. Catania lost 2/3 of its population. Syracuse was devastated. Ragusa fell. Augusta crumbled. Modica was nearly erased. And the town of Noto, the old Noto, built on a mountainside 10 kilometers from the coast, was destroyed so completely that survivors decided not to rebuild. They started over. A new Noto was planned from scratch on a different site, lower and closer to the sea. And here's where tragedy became opportunity. Because the architects and urban planners who designed the new city had something rare, a blank canvas. They built New Noto in the most extravagant Baroque style imaginable. Every facade was designed for visual impact. Every street was oriented to capture light at dramatic angles. Every church, palazzo, and public building used the same local limestone, a stone with a peculiar property that would become the city's signature. At midday, Noto's buildings look pale cream, pleasant but not remarkable. But when the sun begins to set, the limestone transforms. Chemical compounds in the stone react to warm spectrum light, shifting the entire city toward gold, then amber, then a deep honeyed rose. By golden hour, Noto doesn't look real. It looks like a film set designed by someone who had unlimited budget and a romantic streak. The entire urban landscape glows as if lit from within. That effect isn't accidental. The architects knew what this stone did. They designed an entire city around a daily light show that has been running automatically for over 300 years. But not everyone rebuilt the same way. "10 kilometers inland from Noto lies Ragusa, or rather, 2 Ragusas. When the 1693 earthquake struck, Ragusa was reduced to ruins like every other city in the region. But the survivors couldn't agree on how to rebuild. Half wanted to construct a modern, rationally planned city on the plateau above the old site. The other half wanted to rebuild exactly where the medieval city had stood, preserving the street patterns, the property lines, the memories. Both sides won. Ragusa Superiore was built on the plateau. Wide streets, grid patterns, spacious piazzas. It looks like an 18th century urban planning textbook. Ragusa Ibla was rebuilt in the valley below, following the cramped, winding medieval footprint. Streets curve for no apparent reason. Buildings press against each other. Alleys lead to unexpected courtyards. Today, the two cities remain connected but distinct. You can take a staircase of over 300 steps from the upper town to the lower, descending through centuries of architectural philosophy in a 15-minute walk. And between these ruins and reconstructions, one town preserved something even more precious than buildings. It preserved a recipe. Modica doesn't look special at first. Another hilltop town, another collection of Baroque churches and crumbling palazzi. But walk into any of the old chocolate shops along the main street, and you'll encounter something that hasn't changed since the 16th century. Cioccolato di Modica. Chocolate made the way the Aztecs made it. When Spanish conquistadors brought cacao to Europe, they also brought techniques, grinding the beans on stone metates, mixing them with sugar without applying heat, creating a grainy, crystalline texture completely unlike modern smooth chocolate. Everywhere else in Europe, chocolatiers quickly switched to conching, a heated process invented in the 19th century that produces the silky, melting chocolate we're familiar with today. Monica refused. For 500 years, the chocolate shops of this Sicilian town have continued grinding cacao on cold stone, producing chocolate with a texture that's sandy, slightly gritty, with crystals of sugar that crunch between your teeth and flavors that hit differently, brighter, less fatty, more intensely cacao. Why? Stubbornness, tradition, a belief that newer isn't always better. It's a micro-example of Sicily's larger philosophy: absorb everything, abandon nothing. And now, as our journey nears its end, we leave the cities behind entirely. On Sicily's northwestern coast, wedged between limestone cliffs and the Mediterranean, lies the Zingaro Nature Reserve, the first protected wilderness area in Sicilian history. And it only exists because of a protest. In the 1980s, regional authorities planned to build a coastal highway directly through this landscape. Environmental activists responded with a months-long campaign that included demonstrations, legal challenges, and a mass march along the cliffs. In 1981, the Zingaro became Sicily's first nature reserve. Today, no cars are allowed, no buildings, no development of any kind. The only way to experience the reserve is on foot, following trails that wind between coves with water so clear it looks like air. The limestone cliffs plunge straight down into turquoise pools. Wild orchids grow in rock crevices. Eagles circle overhead. After days of ancient temples and Baroque facades, Zingaro feels like medicine for the eyes. But Sicily has one more landscape, and it brings our story full circle. North of the main island, scattered across the Tyrrhenian Sea, lie the Aeolian Islands, a volcanic archipelago where the Earth continues to reshape itself in real time. Lipari, the largest island, has been mined for pumice since Roman times. You can still see the quarries, entire hillsides carved into white terraces where volcanic stone is extracted. This was the source of the abrasive material that Romans used to smooth marble. Vulcano, named after the god, still releases sulfurous gases through fumaroles. The beaches are black sand. The air smells like rotten eggs. And tourists come anyway, soaking in hot mud baths heated by magma chambers below. But the island you'll remember forever is Stromboli. Stromboli rises directly from the sea like a black pyramid. There's one town, one road, one active volcano that has been erupting continuously for at least 2,000 years. The local name for Stromboli is Idu, Sicilian dialect for him. The volcano is not called it. He is called he, a presence, a neighbor, a personality. Every 15 to 20 minutes, day and night, Stromboli erupts. Not catastrophically, rhythmically, glowing orange lava shoots into the air, visible for kilometers. At night, hiking guides lead tourists up the slopes to watch from observation points as molten rock paints the darkness. Stand on the deck of a boat at midnight, 2 kilometers offshore, and watch Stromboli pulse. The eruptions come with a sound like a giant breathing, a deep, resonant boom that travels across the water. Between eruptions, the mountain falls quiet. Then, another pulse, another fountain of fire. And you realize, finally, what Sicily has been telling you all along. Civilizations come to this island. They build temples, cathedrals, theaters, villas. They cover floors with gold. They carve columns that last millennia. And then they leave, conquered, collapsed, absorbed into whoever arrives next. But the volcanoes remain. The coastline remains. The fundamental forces that shaped this landscape, pressure, heat, collision, and eruption, operate on timescales that make human history look like weather. Kingdoms are cloud formations, religions are seasonal patterns, languages are temperature fluctuations. And Sicily simply absorbs it all. If history flows like molten rock, then Sicily is the terrain that catches each flow, cools it, and builds new ground on top, layer after layer after layer. Greek beneath Roman, beneath Byzantine, beneath Arab, beneath Norman, beneath Spanish, beneath Italian, beneath whatever comes next. There are places on Earth that feel historical, museums of the past. Sicily is different. Sicily is still happening, still being written by earthquakes, eruptions, and the stubborn human refusal to abandon a place that has destroyed everyone who ever loved it. And that volcano on Stromboli, it's been watching for 2,000 years, watching empires flicker like candle flames across the sea. Still erupting. Still waiting. For whatever comes next. This has been the crossroads of the ancient world, the island where civilizations collide, the place where destruction and creation became the same force, measured in lava and limestone and gold. But here's the unsettling truth. Everything you've seen today, the temples, the mosaics, the cathedrals, the cities built from volcanic stone, represents only what we've discovered so far. Beneath Sicily's soil lie archaeological sites that haven't been excavated, shipwrecks that haven't been documented, ruins buried by eruptions that haven't been uncovered, and the volcanoes keep adding new layers, burying and preserving simultaneously. In another 1,000 years, someone will stand on this island and look at our era the same way we look at the Greeks, a brief flash of activity, compressed into a stratum of rock and rubble, waiting to be interpreted. Because on Sicily, history isn't something that happened. It's something that's still happening. And the island doesn't remember. It accumulates.